forms as we can take. And the crazy thing that was, the reason it took me so long to get over on YouTube was because I would not give Zoom permission to delete any videos and manage my account, which were what I had to do if I wanted to get this information up on their platform. It's true. I don't know what to do when things are slow, and we know that our audience is being censored. It is true, we're in a crazy time. Transhumanism agendas are what we are being called to talk about. It is true. I hope that you will join me in understanding that if this video is set to only me, I'm going to be suspicious. It was. Now I change it to public and get around that, because more people need to see that I'm doing this live because it's called for now. And so I hope that you'll join me. It's true, we are being called to come together. It's true, and I hope that you will enjoy the show I have planned for you today. Would you say you are my friend, willing to come along with me down rabbit holes? We're sorry we're having trouble playing this video, they say on Facebook, so maybe I better just try to focus on the one that I'm doing live where I said I'd be. Over on YouTube, it's true. Hello, you who are here. I say I hope you have a great day. I want to say we are creatures of comfort who largely pursue the familiar at the expense of growth and adventure. But on the threshold of a new year, we open up the space to release the old and invite in the new, a new way of being, seeing, thinking, living, and knowing, truly knowing who you are. Your soul self, that's who we want to introduce you to, which is why Michael and I have been doing the Michael and Laura Show, introducing you to the teachings of the Ascended Masters. The essence of who you've always been, will always be, and try to pretend not to be like until the situation calls for absolute honesty, and you are called to drop your defense mechanisms to show fully up. In the present moment, the Agape International Spiritual Centers, Sacred Service, Mystery, Ministry, honors the spiritual practice of service as a way of life, they say. It is the place where we outwardly express who we inwardly are by sharing our gifts and talents. In doing so, we create a strong sense of community while expanding our hearts and fulfilling our souls too. It's true, I am excited to be sharing New Year's Day with Michael Bernard Beckwith, who will be sharing about standing in your sovereignty as sovereign beings who ultimately are here to create a world we can be proud to live in, and we must unite in the name of peace, love, and light, not just in the way that we say, get out of my way, in a very peaceful way. That's not really when we roll our eyes or cross our fingers behind our backs and pretend to say the truth when it's not. No, 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 no. That is not how we are, truly our best. This month I will be reading to you the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's true that I'll be bringing him to you because I think that you would benefit, and it is true that I will do as much as I can to uplift you while I have a platform to do that. And if you find that I'm not here anymore when eventually that happens, because we all die eventually, at some point none of us make it out safely from life, it is true, none of us do. We are simply called to be the best we can be where we are. Enough is as good as a feast, like I shared in the song that came before this one, because I'm singing now, and I don't have a script, but who really does when it comes down to life? And why do we think that we need one? It's true. It gives us a sense of certainty that we thrive on until we don't, until we find the script we've been told actually does not have our best interest at heart. And so now we must choose otherwise, and we must choose to be the co-creators of the world we share, and are being called to change where we are. It is true, I say to you, I hope that you will take a stand for being the sovereign being of your inner world. It is true, we must go into the kingdom of who and whose we truly are, and it is time for us to know that we cannot be anything we already weren't before, because we are all things. And it's true that you love the mirror you are looking through right now, or maybe you don't, but either way, what I have to say is that either way it is on you, because what you see in me, you see in yourself in some way. I said at 6:55, that's the master number for Archangel Michael, who is great to call in when you feel like you're corded to something that's draining your energy. You just need to call in Archangel Michael to sever the course of negativity that binds you to a not now moment that takes your power out of the present. And so you must bring it back to the present moment, the one that is now, that is always happening, which is why time's not actually linear the way we've thought that it was, but more like a multi-dimensional layer cake that we are being called to eat and understand that we are all in the now moment. One's in front and behind are both here now too. They just maybe not in the same view, and that's okay. It's why we must master the high rise of perspective. I created it and have called it the high rise of emotional awareness for so long, but now I see that emotional awareness is actually just perspective. It's true. And now I say to you, we must design our own special practice that will better honor all of who we are, instead of only celebrating aspects of ourself, being spelled CELL-F. And in the process, we must intentionally fill the cells of our own energy den with faith in the power of goodness to triumph over evil, where the energy is veiled to prevent us from seeing our power to choose, find the good, and face the shadows. We are called to excavate the toxic barrels from the subconscious ocean of collective consciousness and begin to purify ourselves, realizing distraction and fatigue are strategies the dark side employs to keep us down on our faith in ourselves. Real, REAL hyphen EYE, zing, like the sting that comes when we get a hard truth in the present and we say, holy shit, how did I not see that before? It's because the oblivious is made obvious only when the lies are exposed, which is what I hope to do. And I won't sing the whole thing, but I think that this was fun too. So we'll just continue on and say the sovereign soul is what I'll be tuning into. Michael Bernard back with his thing is on the soul tomorrow, and so I'll sit in that tutorial and get what I need, the medicine I need from teachers who are also on this path called life. All of us are on different levels of awareness, and we must understand the best is yet to come because we will be creating it now. And so I say, it's about taking our power back so we become our biggest cheerleader. Because if not us, then who will be? Abusive powers? Abusive parents don't generally give back the toys they take away. So why do we think this will be any different? Are you ready to actually listen to what I think of what's actually happening right now? We are being called to take sides against each other by becoming the masked ones and the unmasked ones in public, and while the unmasked ones have to strengthen their tube of light to ensure the negativity of a brainwashed society doesn't poison your well or the inner kingdom of your emotional reality, because even though it isn't seen or necessarily felt immediately, negative emotions can creep up and turn into negative thoughts, which become a negative story, which becomes topic of conversation, where more energy is directed on the topic of the conversation. And that is when we must offer a reminder of the power of the spoken word, and why my Michael Seegers and I share more insights on the Michael and Laura show. He's been a student, practitioner, and mentor of the teachings of the Ascended Masters, as he aims at becoming an arhat, clearing 51% of his karma by sharing the truths that he has discovered in his voracious study of religion, mysticism, magic, and folklore, and quickly became an ally who wanted to share with the world simply because I felt the resonance of truth. I felt the frequency of acceptance of where we are and felt the elating experience of peace, and then realized that the 3.5 years leading up to this moment, when I flipped open this book to begin, willing after a passage left on the last page to say that I am to see it already done, and so be it. And so here we go, unleashed and unconstrained, and not willing to follow the advice of the Reiki master who wanted me to tone it down when I was growing up. And instead, I am choosing to take a stand, not just for my freedom, but not just for freedom for myself, as it may appear. I am actually standing for my ability to sprinkle magic on the customers that come through my till, who I often have conversations with when there is time. And most people really try to be super respectful, and disobeying social convention is offensive to some. Choosing to see the world in a different way means always feeling like the misfit who didn't feel like I fitted and never really did fit with any one group for long. My expulsion from a Halloween party with my best friend from grade 11, who was put in a bad spot because her longtime friend was an atheist who was downright offended that I would mention God and talk about a forbade subject publicly. The more specific we are about the power of our creative nature, the more secure we feel within ourselves, because we know how to support ourselves through anything, knowing it is not just us who are on our own side. There is a whole force of beings there to support us if only we are willing to call. They will not interfere with our free will, and so it is up to us to actually bid their assistance and call for it. Let us learn how to activate our chakras so we can radiate light, so we can connect with more people's energy field when we are around them, and to know that the 6-foot social distancing is a clue in and of itself. If it were really about the physical distance, it would have been called physical distancing from the beginning. But the psyop was around the social component being what then people were taught to fear. And if they can teach us to fear each other, then it is unsafe for the fearful ones to get too close to the ones who are free. And free ones are dangerous because they give hope to the ones who thought that they had none. And that is how we take the elevator of gratitude up to higher levels of consciousness, which is when we move out of emotional states of needing the energy to move, and instead then step onto the stage where we then become the beacons of light that contaminate the darkness, that shine light where there was shadow before. And then when fear knocked and love answered, there was no one there, because fear could not stand in the presence of love. The message I want to share today starts with the hair virus, HARE. It's a computer virus back in 1996. And I want to point out the connection to Alice in Wonderland's reference to Follow the White Rabbit, which leads us to what we're not talking about, which is the human trafficking issue. That is like the elephant in the room where people so focused on them and theirs, the narcissistic culture that we have been raised within, that they don't realize what's ours, and that is the children. The children that are being trafficked, and also the children within our own souls. Our soul is the child, and they have been traumatizing the child within for years, making us fearful of our own empowerment above all else. And I say to you and to me too that it is time for us to step beyond that false threshold to our power and reclaim it peacefully by calming ourselves and learning how to navigate our own emotional system so that we are able to call our power back present regardless of the chaos on the outside. We have and continue to desecrate the earth and accept this truth as a bad reality that we sheepishly say they're going to have to pay for about the children that come from us that are inheriting this, and we're ruining it for them and giving away their power in the process by being their voice. They're going to have to pay for the irresponsible choice we're making to masquerade in a sick society, in a sick reality show, where we are pretending to believe in a story based on numbers and reports that we are not sure are accurate, except that it says so on the Tell Lie Vision. Tell, L-I-E, vision. What vision is being told on the programming that is going straight into the subconscious if we're not aware of the conscious-subconscious super connection, the superconsciousness and the supraconsciousness. Right now, there is a transhumanism movement going on where RNA is literally going to be altered within the injections that some are standing up to take as if they are doing their social duty to obey the orders and protect others by injecting themselves with something that people don't know what is in it. And they're trusting people who have already sold out because in the 8 dharmas, fame and disgrace are the polar spectrums, the experiences that we are experiencing, where pain and pleasure, loss and gain, and praise and blame are the other 3 spectrums of creativity within the dharmas. It is time for us to understand there is a functional and a dysfunctional creative experience to everything. When creativity is in a reactive state, it is not able to do what it could if it were liberated. And we are giving away our freedoms. And our children are not going to have them back if we don't take a stand for them. So as scary as it is, and as much as we have to sacrifice, maybe jobs, reputations, what people think of us, the desire to fit in or be liked by many, all of those things must be sacrificed if we're going to actually live in a society where our children don't grow up to think that it is normal to be masked and to not see someone's whole face. Because if we are that masked publicly, what are we privately? And what are we personally? And if we understand the multiple spheres that we are living within, then we begin to see how the public sphere has been penetrating our personal and our private worlds too. And it is really sick and twisted. It is really sick and twisted. And we need to be willing to take a stand and say no more. Only we can do that. And we have a responsibility, I believe, to ourselves and the child within, which is the soul, to get to know it better, to actually take the time that it takes to raise a child, knowing it takes a village. We all know that. And yet we have become okay with this culture that says we need to raise our child ourselves, just us, the parents, and them, the child, and to have it very much a hierarchical, I came first, therefore I know best model. When the truth is that is not true. We were all just doing the very best we could with what we knew until then. And now that we know better, because some of us have went down different rabbit holes to find different information that kind of puts it all into perspective, such as the hair virus that I believe is connected to the snowshoe hair virus, which is actually a virus, but I feel like they're replicating it for the big V model of needing to keep it super cool. And if you look up the snowshoe hair virus, you'll see more of what's there. But for right now, it is also to say about the white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland being the timekeeper. And if we actually understand that we're running out of time, because all time is happening right now, and the moment that we get something that is genetically modified injected into us that was patented as 060606 in March of 2020 by the Gates Foundation. This is no joke, with the luciferase enzyme within it. Seriously, when you understand that seeds are owned by Monsanto, because anything genetically modified that then interacts with something genetically modified, at some point, there is a tipping point where then that modified organism then becomes owned by the patent holder. And if you actually look at the fact that what is being injected into willing participants, and also noted is free, we are then the guinea pigs. We become the guinea pigs within this mass psyop that is absolutely out of this world, except for it is of this world, because this is not God, this is man's design. And you can read about the design in Agenda 2030 or Agenda 21. You can read about it in the Rockefeller report from 2010, where the president of Gaia actually read it out to his people. Read the Rockefeller report from 2020, or look up the president of Ghana reading it to his people in Ghana on YouTube, because of the wicked nature of what is happening right now. This PSYOP is not about a virus at all, except for if you look at what a virus is and the interchangeability that they have applied disease and virus says a lot. If you understand that a dis-ease is cellular disharmony within the body. So if you actually start to look at things at a deeper level, the way that I have been looking at it, especially since going through the mental health system last year and becoming a trapped prisoner who literally could only get out by taking their medication, improving my own sanity and unwillingness to fall into fear where I lost power, and instead decided to stay as high vibing as this, which meant that I elevated the consciousness within the space and the fellow participants who were in the program under mental health circumstances, but many of whom were simply out of the box thinkers that were needing to be put into a model of conformity more. There are drug dealers in the end of the day, indeed. There are 13 families that run the shadow government that control the world, and the 13 families ultimately are connected to the 6 media conglomerates that own all of the media outlets that make it seem like we have a variety of choice, but in truth, do we? The truth is stranger than fiction. We've heard that many times, and if we actually go back, what does it matter who's one or who's two? What does it matter when we understand that the age of Pisces was a hierarchical structure? And the age of Pisces was said to have ended when in the Bible, Jesus passes the fish on so that it then becomes about the water. And this isn't a religious message, which makes me laugh because somebody got off the moment that I mentioned the good book, which I say the good book only because others say the good book. But in truth, I haven't read the whole good book because I could never get through the whole thing because I felt Like there was mistruth within the words, because ultimately all books are filtered and channeled through the hand of man. And a man or woman is an impure filter, because we have the conscious mind to get through before the subconscious, which is like the database that contains all of our subconscious memories from this life. And then the superconscious, which is essentially the field, which Lynn McTaggart talks about in a book named as such, The Field, where she talks about finding God through the field, through science. And what is science but simply the best hypothesis that's been proven until a better one gets proven at the expense of the old one, which then gets replaced. And having a conversation with someone who says that the scientists say so, and of course science is ever going to be changing, because ultimately it's they're learning more, so they have to change it. So it just makes sense that science would change. But does it make sense that the WHO actually changed the definition of herd immunity in October 2020? And if you look at the difference before and the difference after, you would understand that in fact there is a lot to that. I'm going to go and find it. So thanks for tuning in. Yeah. Oh, God. Guys, we are at a time where we are truly being called to step up and to stop listening to people that say they have our best interest at heart, when the truth is, no, not necessarily. We have abusive parents at the helm of the government who have sold us out and been pussy whipped by the whips of the political sphere, so to speak. That is a horrible expression, and I don't even specifically know the origins of it. But what I do know is that we throw around sayings that are popular far too easily. I want to read you the definition of herd immunity before October 2020 and then after. So before October 2020, herd immunity, also called herd effect, community immunity, population immunity, or social immunity, is a form of indirect protection from infectious disease that occurs when a sufficient percentage of a population that become immune to an infection during a sufficient or minimum time, which means that a number of immunized individuals are needed for a given time to achieve the goal of collective immunity, whether through vaccination or previous infections, thereby reducing the likelihood of infection for individuals who lack immunity. Immune individuals are unlikely to contribute to disease transmission, disrupting chains of infection, which stops or slows the spread of disease. The greater the proportion of immune individuals in a community during a certain time, the smaller probability that non-immune individuals will come into contact with an infectious individual. That was before October 2020, where much has changed, and I say this at 11:33, so pay attention. After October 2020, herd immunity, also known as population immunity, is a concept used for vaccination. In a population can be protected from a certain virus if a threshold of vaccination is reached. Herd immunity is achieved by protecting people from a virus, not by exposing them to it. I forgot that I can get banned for just even saying that word, which is the craziest thing about all of this, but let me continue. These train our immune systems to create proteins that fight disease, known as antibodies, just as would happen when we are exposed to a disease, but crucially, these work without making us sick. These people are protected from getting the disease in question and passing it on, breaking any chains of transmission. So what happened to the ability of previous infection to increase our immunity to said virus? And also going back then to the fact that our interchangeable use of the word virus and disease is very telling for the sense of permanence that this whole thing was approached with. Because a dis-ease is cellular disharmony within a disharmonious environment, which germ theory is the idea you can put a healthy fish into a sick tank, and when the fish gets sick, you say that it was the fish's fault, compared to the idea of clean up the tank and then you and the fish can coexist. The way Mother Nature is calling us to take a stand, because she will only let us be here for so long if we don't start looking after her too, because she's got about 60 years of good soil left. And that was in a documentary that I had watched about, I think it's called The Need to Grow. And I would highly recommend it too. But there was a panel of doctors who spoke up against the pharmaceutical industry's lack of responsibility in recommending ventilators, which pose a serious risk where recovery is concerned. A local neighbor contracted it. I'm not going to share that. I'm going to share it. But I don't like to do this because then everybody gets pissed. But the fact is, we all know community members who have died after testing positive for it. What does that mean, though? Because the thing is that the doctor who came up with the PPR test in the first place was taken out earlier this year when he was speaking up saying, this test was not designed for this. There is no COVID-19 test that you can do. They're using mine and saying it is good. But basically, what they're testing for is biological matter all of us have. And if you've had any V in the previous year, even just like the flu injection, like you have some of the biological material that they are testing for. So please understand that the more they spin this test, the more separated and the smaller the particle size of what they're looking for is, which means if they need to raise the number or decrease the number at all, they just change the number of times they do the spin test. If I'm wrong, by all means. So a local neighbor contracted the virus when he went to Florida with his wife and wound up on a ventilator and dead within a short period of time. And when I was told he was on a ventilator, I knew his chances weren't good because of what I had read about the fact that this is actually not a lung issue. This is a blood issue. And if I did have it in February of last year, as I think that I did, when I was teaching children in China at the same time, it's almost as if it attacks the fear that is present within our bodies. And it goes wherever is going to take us out most, because we're all loaded with nanoparticles already from what they've been dropping in the chemtrails onto the lands that we're eating from, onto us as we're driving by or walking by or whatever we're doing. It's landing on us. Those straight clouds behind planes are not exhaust. Please, let us stop being so naive as to think that just because it's been normalized, that it's actually okay. It's not. And it's not even just the fact that we're saying it's okay. It's the fact that we're the pilots that are getting paid to drop those trails onto the people, including our own family. We're the people that are being called to go arrest people or shut local businesses down who are just saying, look, we have an equal right to run our business and operate professionally as the big box chains, which are taking all of the business. And if we don't understand that what is happening right now is the systematic elimination of small business owners and entrepreneurs, we have to understand that what is actually happening right now is that anybody that has managed to hang on until now are basically being wiped out because their Boxing Day sales are being eliminated right now. So their chance for making up the lost income of the last year, as many business owners know, happens at the end of the year when people are still in the need to buy consumeristic mentality of the season. And then they spend a bunch of money that gives the business owner the boost they need to be able to stay in business for a few extra months, which are generally speaking dry periods because everybody's just overspent and now are paying and for the hangover on their credit card balance. Essentially, most people, especially in the West, where we have been so blessed that we have become complacent and become one of the most indebted nations. And did you know that in the Agenda 21 Sustainability Act, from my understanding, South Africa's a red zone and so is Canada, which means that there won't be life in this place that is free except where they determine those free spaces to be, which won't be much. And if anyone lives on a reserve, you know that the conditions can be rough. It is very difficult to be an individual within a close-knit tribe because everybody needs to keep the tribe safe at the expense of the individual. And what we are all are individuals who have come to this world in order to take a stand as the man and woman that incarnated here to be part of the change that we came here to be, which is to step up and say, no more. Is it okay for profits to be more important than people? Yes, profits matter, but profits are not just about a monetary system that is being broken down right now. And there was actually an incredible message that I sent to many people by Catherine Austin Fitz on a full interview on Planet Lockdown that I highly recommend you check out, and was the message I started listening to this morning, where she talks about the convergence of the monetary system, which is the one universal income that is intended to be rolled out. And that means that the monetary system, which they have been feeding based on lies, is inflating our currency, which is the current we see with our eyes because it is what is transacted between individuals. We need to just breathe and understand that the lies are traumatizing, but no more traumatizing than the fact that this is a spiritual war where the territory being fought for is our soul. And the devil's greatest deception was to make the people think he didn't exist and that he wore a red suit and tail with horns. The biggest deception was to make people think that he didn't exist, because then you can easily blend in and be the wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak. I want to share about Munchausen Syndrome by proxy, which according to WebMD is a factitious disorder in which a person repeatedly and deliberately acts as if they have a physical or mental illness when they are not really sick. Munchausen syndrome is considered a mental illness because it is associated with severe emotional difficulties. People with Munchausen syndrome deliberately produce or exaggerate symptoms in several ways. They may lie about or fake symptoms, hurt themselves to bring on symptoms, or alter tests, such as contaminating a urine sample. Warning signs include dramatic or inconsistent medical history, unclear symptoms that are not controllable and that become more severe or change once treatment has begun, predictable relapses following improvement in the condition, extensive knowledge of hospitals or medical terminology, as well as the textbook descriptions of illnesses. I took this off of the WebMD website, and I read you the symptoms because what happens when we realize that it is oftentimes parents who actually turn their child into a patient in order to get attention, that then we realize the parallel between what our governmental parental body is doing to us, the citizens, the children of their care. And then we remember too, because this is in the season of dreaming a new dream together, that we elected them There are far more of us than there are of them, that they have forgot in their rise to fame that they can be disgraced and shamed just as easily in their fall. Now, it is to know, too, that the English have a history of elevating ones they love in order to raise them up and have them fall higher from, or to fall further from a higher height. We have a history of wanting to hurt one another because that is the draconian way. The draconians are a reptilian breed or race that are starseeds like many of us. And if we really think that all of humanity were of the same race, even though we go under the same label, we're just being naive. And to think that aliens are not true and that Men in Black wasn't a fact that was going into who and whose we truly are, then we're the ones that are insane in doing the same things over again, expecting different results, when the truth and the reality is our realistic evidence appearing legit in tomorrow's yesterday will become the reality that we say is truth if we are not willing to step up, if we are not willing to say, no, I will not play that game any longer. No, I am knowing what I stand for and I will not fall for that any longer. No, I will not wear the dog tags of the elite so that we do their bidings and they just pay the rent. No. There's presence of multiple surgical scars, appearance of new or additional symptoms following negative test results. And did I not already read the fact that the WHO changed the definition of herd immunity in October 2022, just as they are changing the design of buildings too? They are making things different so that it is accessible by what would be the equivalent of China's social credit system, where if you watch this, you lose points, which means you don't do that because you can't afford it any longer if everything is tracked and there is no way to play on a black market any longer, even though within the Rockefeller report from 2020, it is clear that there is a backup virus if this one didn't take out enough of us, and it has a quad strain with a strain of HIV within it, which black magic only works if they tell us what they're doing to us in order to make it so that they can say we deserved it because they told us and we laughed, so we were stupid and we got what was coming to us. We didn't realize that by going to the movies and paying to see their performance, that we were actually giving energy to their narrative. So all of those crazy ass movies that you didn't think could possibly be true, on some level, the frightening thing is, yeah, absolutely they are. Like Hostel, that shit's real. That's crazy and it's horrifying. And my heart hurts for everybody that is caught up in that heinous, torturous, terroristic experience of our dark side, which we must heal within ourselves if we are going to rise beyond it. The problem with identity and self-esteem is ultimately what the WebMD refers to Munchausen Syndrome. And I believe that we are in a thought war where the territory being fought for is our very soul. And so we must do our part to prepare ourselves by understanding some of the rabbit holes I have ventured down. The stunning hypothesis I just encountered is the possibility that the current virus is connected to the hair virus, which was a DOS and Windows 95 systems machine in 1996. It was also known as hair.7610 Krishna, KRSHNA. It's a colon, not a slash, but so hair 7610 Krishna and HD euthanasia. I understand this is pretty crazy, but the links make sense. I'm not for sure, but even this snowshoe hair virus that came into my awareness yesterday, I say at 44, it's all there for us. And the way that it's all playing out is just insane. But let me read you more. It was a computer virus capable of infecting .com and .exe executable files, as well as the master boot record and sector on floppy disks. The virus was set to read the system date of the computer and activate on August 22nd and September 22nd, at which time it would erase the hard disk in the computer and display the message, HD Euthanasia by Demon Emperor, Hare Krishna, har har. Evil, the epitome of it, but then please, the disturbingly random search result that put the correlation between what is now playing out in the mainstream media propaganda and what I just learned about the snowshoe hair virus that seems to have some crazy parallels to what is written in the Rockefeller report from 2010, which is also called the Foundation Report for what is more widely known as the Sustainability Act, which is the evil agenda of the few entitled ones at the top of the pyramid working to minimize how much of the Earth's resources we, the ants of the world, consume. Now, I wanted to say something that just totally left my mind in that moment, and I wonder if anyone has any questions. I also feel it is important for us to connect to the fact we are in a red zone here in Canada, just as South Africa has been marked as a red zone. And right now, there are South African farm owners, landowners, who are being approached by militia who are having their land demanded of them. And when they decline to give their life's savings to men with guns, they're shot in the head and the land is lost anyway. And if we think about the history of, at first, when they were putting people into concentration camps during World War II, they had them wear the Star of David, which is the equivalent of this, which they were proudly saying that that was connected to their religion and a very important piece of it. And we say this is to protect one another, even though originally the WHO had said, don't wear a mask. It doesn't actually help. It's like putting up a fence to keep out a mosquito. But then suddenly, 10 days after Bill Gates came to Ontario and met with all of the local mayors, then donations were made to the areas that mandated the masks, and all of them did. Curious? Sold out. Obvious? Conspiracy. What happens when the conspiracies actually lead to more truth than the falsehoods that are contradicting themselves when the truth never contradicts itself? Pay attention to contradictions. Contradictions are lies that are made obvious, that were previously oblivious to people that didn't suspect that the one that loved them or claimed to would do the things that are being done to the people if we don't step up, which is why I have heard for years that the galactic beings observing planet Earth's experiment have been hoping and doing their best to ensure that we don't become asexual the way that some of them have. Because if all time is happening right now, there are species of alien races that are no longer able to produce because they made it so that they couldn't with what they took into their systems. And that is what is happening right now. The fertility issues that so many people are having right now are directly correlated to all of the hormones that are in everything. The fluoride in toothpaste and our water systems that are put into water systems drank by the people, by guys and girls in hazmat suits is curious. This pail of sludge that is put into the vat where hot dogs are made to break down all of the parts in order for it to not be discernible and recognizable as a previous carcass. The fact that McDonald's has been taken to court on multiple occasions for having more than just trace elements of human DNA, such as someone losing a finger in their meat, These things are horrifying and sound very conspiracy theorist. But then we have to understand that that term in itself was coined by the CIA to prevent people from actually looking into the truth around JFK's assassination, because if they did, then they were called into question, and no one wants that because it's safer, it seems, to not be questioned. But the ones who are speaking out are ultimately losing everything that was of perceived value except their own dignity. And that's what we are being called to remember. We are being called to remember that we are the peaceful inner warriors who have come here to be the change that we seek in this world. We are the spiritual warriors who have come to make a difference and to ensure that humanity do not become overtaken by RNA altering genes that make us then property of the patent holder of the patent claimed in March 2020 that was numbered 060606, the mark of the beast. No joke. Luciferase enzyme, which is a bioluminescent substance that gets put into what is happening, plus all of the nanoparticles, which are in all of those tests that are getting jammed right next to your brain, metals and things based on what's contaminated in those sticks, the cotton swabs. It sounds crazy, but I went to go get my tetanus shot done from the doctor last week, and literally I changed my mind because it's like, oh God, I don't know that I need it. I don't know that I want that in my system. I never thought I would be an anti-veer. Truly. I never thought that I would be somebody that needed to step up when all I wanted was to be liked, that all I wanted to do was sprinkle magic on people, that all I wanted to do was help people remember their power. And then I went through everything I did to understand the necessity of us going through the journey in order to find either the joy or the earn. Understanding joy starts the journey and earn is sandwiched in between, and it is up to us to choose where we will focus. That a rut is simply a grave with both ends kicked out, and that a grave is either 6 foot under or 6 foot distant if we are willing to play the mainstream narrative game that is not for us, and that if we perpetuate, we are going to eventually stand on trial. And when our grandchildren look at us and say, where were you? And what were you doing when they were taking away our freedoms and making this the new norm? And we say, I was playing the game. I was scared. Well, we don't have that opportunity any longer, my friends. We're being called to take a stand now. And there's a whole page about the Federal Sustainable Development Act that then takes us into the strategy or report that seems to be all about a continual tabling of judgments and developments. So the courts stay in limbo and the people rise up to say, we will no longer allow lower levels of emotional awareness to control and dominate us, and have for so long. They become entitled or cocky. The politicians have had the power for so long that they have become entitled and cocky. And now it is time for us to say, we elected you and you have abused your power. And right now, Jackie Phoenix and I did an interview where I interviewed her about about Article 61 and how the barons enacted it in March 2001, which ever since technically the government has been falsely operating, because ultimately we, the people, had a clause in the Magna Carta 1215 that the barons put in there before they would agree to give the king permission to set the other rules, which was to say that if the king became treasonous, that the people and the barons could come together and take over until someone more responsible or something more responsible took place. And basically in 2001, the queen was written to, and she basically acknowledged that she didn't have the power to do what they were calling her to do, which was to reinstate order. And so then they called on Article 61 on March 23rd of 2001. And that then made it so that ever since the government have been falsely operating. And did you know that in the Library of Congress, there are 2 books written by a man by the last name of Ingersoll? And one of them is called The Last President, and the other one is called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Adventures, where both are connected to what is happening now because Baron Trump was actually mentored by a man named Don. And Don had a member called Pence in his cabinet. And there are so many overlaps and parallels. Did you also know that George Trump, who was Trump's grandfather, I believe is where I read that, he was actually the one who was tasked within the FBI to investigate the legitimacy of Tesla's time travel machine. And then that, was it Trump's grandmother, I believe it was, who was on the board of IBM. And if you actually look at how all of the big figures, the ones who have made it to the top, are how they're positioned, you really start to actually see parallels, including the fact that Gates, Soros, and Fauci, I believe it was, were all actually roommates at the same university institution because they were all schooled together for this agenda, which has been underway for far longer than we could even comprehend. And it's such an evil plan that they actually were willing to exercise patience because they understood that idle hands are the devil's playground, which is why we have become a society that is so inundated and encouraged to be very much entertained at the expense of educated. Fear, manipulation, control, and greed have been used to control our consciousness, and this year has been a universal bitch slap where humanity is called to rise up, speak up, demand our sovereignty and our rights as original people, which are the very ones who were overtaken by the Residential Schools Act, and we don't think it can happen to us? Please help me understand. There are 1 million people in China who are in concentration camps being reprogrammed and repatterned to make sure that they believe what is acceptable, and if they don't, they die. The world is not so small, my friends. It is a next level of light work where we begin to understand spiritual warfare so we can hold on to the awareness that we cannot beware unless we are aware, and yet we cannot dwell there and expect the toxicity of our environment to not infect us. And the thing we are being infected with is our fear or faith. I wish my customers a happy new year and a healthy body, mind, and spirit and heart, because that strengthens them and changes the next dynamic they have with someone else in our community. We have to see it, to speak up against it from its oppression. And having received an Honors Bachelor of English Literature from McMaster University in 2009, I got firsthand exposure to the indoctrinating philosophies of the academic institution I was at personally, and can imagine other post-secondary schools are also taught based on. My degree courses included modern countercultures, contemporary critical theory, problems in method and mediations, critical theory, the history of critical theory by my all-time favorite professor, Dr. David Clark. He was also my genderqueer course teacher, as the school where I also studied the social scientists, leadership methodologies, communication strategies, and conflict mediation skills that led to my 33-year-old self ready to fully commit to the 33 Days to Dream a New Dream Together series that I started yesterday, where we will work to do exactly that. You are more powerful than you currently know, because it is not what we have been taught in an indoctrinated culture that would do its best to ensure we gave our power fully away, and the fine print of the solutions that will be freely given by an abusive parent, the government, who have been falsely operating since the barons enacted Article 61 of the Magna Carta 1215. That is the first binding contract with a People's Protection Clause. But in 1216, the laws were changed to remove the People's Protection Act quietly behind closed doors and trusted doors, which is treason. when it is done by pen instead of having an enemy show up at your gates. It is like the Trojan horse behind closed doors. And no longer can we allow that to be okay just because we elected the ones who are writing with the pens that have the power. We are calling the individuals committing treason to commit for their action, we are calling the individuals committing treason to account for their actions and misdeeds by understanding that if it was in order offers no one solution to the child or parent who had their next of kin killed and will forever miss their physical presence ever after, because someone failed to exercise compassion and made it about the task instead of the implications of their actions. It's the epitome of dysfunctional creative spectrums of irresponsibility and obligation compared to the functional alternative we are now called to practice, which is the balance between freedom and constraint. We have to understand why we find it so hard to accept an alternative perspective, and the answer is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when two competing ideas begin to cohabitate in the same cramped quarters. It's like bringing home a baby to a household of jealous giants. It will be difficult to raise that child with those giants unless they are either won over honestly or by domination. And domination is the way historically it has been done. And what is history, after all, but the story he wanted to have us think were true when the truth is stranger than fiction? You can read all about your true nature in the CIA report, searchable online under Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process, where you begin to realize that we as individuals are the gateway to all time and the possibilities within it as master creators and lauds, LAW''Ds, who learned to use the universal laws and principles to master riding the magic of the moment, like I've been doing for the last hour. The universe loves speeds and waits for no one. No one are immune to time. None are immune to time until we are, because we were able to transmute enough karma to ascend. But back to how the hair virus connects to the current pandemic causing coronavirus we're all being taught to fear. Well, let me make two parallels before we go any further. By definition, corona is a part of the body resembling or likened to a crown. The rarefied gaseous envelope of the sun and other stars. The sun's corona is normally visible only during a total solar eclipse, when it is seen as an irregularly shaped pearly glow surrounding the darkened disk of the moon. This is different from COVID-19, which could sensibly stand for Certificate of V, Identification 2019, 1 being A, 9 being I, AI. As part of setting us up with the cloud interface that can target human beings with enough metals, we have become conductors to the data will be fed as if we become the smartphones we've grown so accustomed to. We've started wearing the technology on us, which is the step before wearing it inside us becomes the next thing to do. I want to mention too that Catherine Austin Fitts, Caterine Austin, Austin, Fitts, Fitts, did a great interview called Planet Lockdown, and I highly recommend watching that as I did this morning, because it does put a lot of stuff into context. By definition, according to Google, COVID-19 is a new strain of coronavirus, where we are taught to fear something we can't see and don't know exists for sure, but we're afraid to find out differently. Go back to Munchausen Syndrome. The virus is to infect our naturalized reaction to be fearful so they can feed off the light of our faith. CO stands for corona, VI for virus, and D for disease. Formerly, this disease was referred to as 2019 novel coronavirus. Here's what I'm proposing. The hair computer virus was how they put energy into their sick long-term depopulation agenda that was written in the Georgian Guidestones in Atlanta
which you can look up to see for yourself. Please also look up Agenda 2030 and Agenda 21, which are deceptively being respected under the guise of the Sustainability Act. Once again, Canada is a red zone, as is South Africa. So to think that we are safe because of the previous seeming freedom we have had and been graciously experiencing and enjoying to the point of taking for granted, which are all designed to depopulate the planet. And I'm sorry to say the RNA altering Vs being administered right now must be stored at low temperatures to protect the protectant barrier around the synthetic substance in order to allow for integration time within the human natural body. It's really sick if you look at how many people are either blinded by the busyness of their own lives to notice what's been happening for a long time, or that they sold us out to the paycheck and vow of secrecy they took to uphold confidentiality for the lies made oblivious to the public, but obvious power plays joked about by the elite who have come to believe anyone can be bought. And because we have been taught to put our power in authority figures, they have only had to buy off the ones who rose to the top and then had too much to lose that they feared speaking up or going against the flow. But we are called to stand up now like we've never stepped up before. And you're here because you're one of the ones who resonates with this message, or you wouldn't have invested the time that you have into this. So I do thank you very much. And I also ask that you share this message with others that need to be called on as well to take a stand and understand that you can call all of these rabbit holes conspiracy theories, or you can actually realize that there is a fox trail that leads us directly to the den. And if we are willing to wake up when we understand we are stronger together, then we don't have to fall in the way that we did before. Hello, great to see you guys. We have a responsibility to our children to not allow them to be raped, mined, and pillaged like the earth we have abused for so long. It is time for us to learn to live harmoniously with the land and to understand that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. An infamous passage from Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love, reflections on the principles of A Course in Miracles. Right now, we find ourselves in a precarious position where we are all being called to separate ourselves by either wearing our fear and compliance on our face compared to those who dare to take a stand for our health as individuals and as a global community. I understand that many people think conspiracy theories wear aluminum foil to protect their thoughts from mind-reading aliens, but the truth is the CIA coined the term conspiracy theorists after JFK's assassination to ensure no one questioned the mixed stories reported based on the vantage point of the viewer, which is where the high rise of emotional awareness or perspectives comes into the picture. As a tool, I believe we are called to master in the transmutation process of reducing the weight of our own negative karma stored within the electronic belt, which is a teaching that I am in the process of editing and will get up today for you from Michael Seegers and I too. So we must also understand the levels of karma currently being fulfilled now. We have a personal karma debt load, a familial karma, and a collective karma, which are all being contributed to by our daily actions and choice to either uplift or depress ourselves, which is exactly what learning to maneuver the high-rise theory consciously will help you do automatically. And the truth is that when the cognitive dissonance of the truth compared to the lies we've been told gets exposed, many will want to off themselves because they will lose everything they thought defined them when the little wizard man gets exposed from behind closed doors and everything as we've known it falls. Pretending to be the majestic, strong, and frightful portrayal of the wizard one would expect It is only just a small man that a dog exposes when he ventures behind a curtain and then finds that the big giant on the screen was only just a little man projecting himself to be larger than life onto something that was no more real than he. Which is where we take a moment to acknowledge that expectations are the leading cause of disappointment. When we know we lost because we didn't try we must, and try we will. Let me tell you the most insane story you could imagine, which will also strangely seem familiar because you've been paying for tickets to feed their dreams for decades. Ever since 1928, when the first television broadcasting began as an experiment on the people where their minds began to be influenced by the tell-a-vision programming that has obviously become more trashy over the years in the name of liberated ideologies that promote violence and war but diminish the significance of love, peace, freedom, joy, and the value of self-responsibility and respect through congruent and committed action. It's time to consider the possibility that maybe our parents didn't know best how to process the trauma, drama, and pain of their lives, and so they just buried it and taught us to do the same. So now we're all at this turning point time in history where we are called to remember who we are and why we came here for this. Because as much as many people are taking their lives by the day, we are the players who were picked to play this game, and right now we're in the finale where if we don't speak up and stop blindly walking toward the concentration camps, it will be like the black magicians mockingly say to their victims. We deserved what we got because they told and showed us what they were doing, but they did it through fake smiles and gritted teeth that hid their contempt for the freeloaders and lazy ones working hard on projects that had not yet paid off. But what if we took a few steps back to realize how everything we have been through has brought us to these words now, being written by me who has walked the world to find out how to love the me I always travel with, myself, as you do yourself too. What I have learned is that the essence of our soul is who we are without our makeup or masks on any level. It's about showing up and refusing to be silent anymore about the things I'm sure we could agree are not right, and we all know it. We also have to ask ourselves some more significant questions about the war on terror and how the military and police officers are made to watch as treasonous orders are demanded of commanders who have traded their humanity, aka their compassion, for the power to give and fulfill commands. It's really quite cruel, to be honest. How good men and women are pressured to sell out their reason for joining their group of choice for the sake of the price they were willing to pay with their soul without knowing what they were truly doing. That's what makes gangs so enticing for people to join, and why I know it sounds insane, but the fact is that we have highly skilled and qualified scientists of various membership groups perpetuating a storyline that has us, the people, getting pit against each other because the best way to win a war is to pit the people against themselves, starve them out, back them into a corner, and then come and clean up what's left. But why I'm sharing the agenda of the shadow government and 13 families that run the world, who must be held personally accountable for their participation in the ultimate psyop of grand proportions and pay for their crimes against humanity with their souls, that is an awfully high cost if we don't know who we're dealing with, and reminds me of the joke where a man dies and goes to hell for another lifetime of poor decisions that bankrupted his soul, and the devil meets him there to say he has 3 choices for how he'd like to spend the rest of eternity as his punishment. In one room, it's the classic version, the evil doers being engulfed by fire and brimstone. In room 2, people are devoured by wild beasts. In the third room, people are standing around in waist-deep excrement, drinking coffee. The man chooses option 3 and wanders over to a big coffee urn, gets himself a coffee, takes a sip, and is feeling pretty good about his decision. Then, over the PA system, an announcement sounds in his room. Attention! Coffee break's over! Back on your heads. As C.S. Lewis wrote in the Screwtape Letters, the greatest deception of all time was in convincing the world he didn't exist. Ironically, the storyline of the movie made based on the book is about an innocent and curious man who wishes to learn about the logical and Christian world. Influenced by his movements is the evil Uncle Screwtape. The patient must not become a Christian, it says. According to imdb.com. What a world to exist where the truth is literally hidden in plain sight and we disregard it because the truth is so ugly. We have become a people easily offended because we are insecure, and when we don't feel secure in ourselves, how do we possibly expect to feel secure in the world? On the creationstudies.org website, it says, I still believe the father of lies is doing whatever he can to deceive. He is always more dangerous when he is hiding behind the scenes, invisible to the people who so easily fall under his influence. The other extreme works well for an entirely different reason and becomes a source of ridicule, an amazing distraction, a parody of the truth. C.S. Lewis wrote the following observation about how people view devils. There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to believe in their existence, the other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. God's children must understand that Satan cannot do anything against believers without first receiving permission. Job 1:9-11, 2:4-6. Because our Heavenly Father is sovereign in all things. Lamb 3:37-38, 15:45-7, Ecclesiastes, the ECC, ECC 7:13-14, we can trust his promise that he will work all things out for his glory and our ultimate benefit. Romans 8:28. The only other thing that Satan can do is lie to us. He is an expert in sending fear-based lies, hurling like so many fiery darts toward the children of God. All of his lies are blocked by the shield of faith. EPH 6:16. We're being called to band together to create community connection through compassionate connection skills training, among other things. And so we are called to stand together in the full armor of God, strong in the Lord, the LAW''D, and the LORD, and in his mighty power. EPH 6:10. It's time to return to our divine nature and realize, REAL-EYES, and realize, REALIZE. And realize that just because we've done things we regret, we have to decide to act differently from now on. We just have to decide to turn around and walk back toward the great central sun we all come from and return to at the end of our lives. But that we must walk through our karma to get back to it, which is why a spiritual path can seem more difficult than a traditional path that leads you safely to your grave, where the ends of the rut you got stuck in simply get brought down on both ends of you. We are creatures of comfort who largely pursue the familiar at the expense of growth and adventure. But on the threshold of a new year, we open up the space to release the old and invite in the new. A new way of being, seeing, thinking, living, knowing, truly knowing who you are, your soul self, the essence of who you've always been, will always be, and try to pretend not to be like until the situation calls for absolute honesty and you are called to drop your defense mechanisms. The Agape International Spiritual Center Sacred Service Missionary or Ministry honors the spiritual practice of service as a way of life. It is the place where we outwardly express who we inwardly are by sharing our gifts and talents. In so doing, we create a strong sense of community while expanding our hearts and fulfilling our souls. As we do within the Hero's Journey to and Sacred Sojourn of the Soul, where we end up in the same place where we began, knowing it for the first time because we now have eyes to see the lies of what previously was oblivious until made obvious because the lies were exposed and then the truth felt more pure because it was. When there is 90% truth and 10% falsehood mixed into something and we don't know how to discern the difference because we haven't tuned into how our emotions actually help us be truth detectors, that we feel truth, and it is through resonance that we are able to master ourselves. That is when then we have far more power than ever before. No action is free of karma. From taking a short walk to a simple hello, every action carries karma, for good and for bad, absolutely, and it gets stored within either the electronic belt that I'll post the video of tomorrow, or of the causal body and the 7 rays that I'll be sharing later today once I get that edited after this. So the wages of sin, which is karma, is death. Death of the soul, and the recycling of it compared to when we are willing to transmute only just 51% of our karma within the electronic belt through daily practice, which is what the 33 days of transformation, or it's 33 days to dream a new dream together. And basically, this is day 2. Welcome. Hi. Glad to have you here. But it's time for us to create a practice that can honor our multidimensionality. We are so much more than we understand, and karma cannot be erased. However, karma can be released. And it is when we add love into the releasing process that we take away the need to erase anything, because all of it served us, which is why our soul walked through it. We just need to extract the lesson from the experience and then let the memory exist without the emotional charge. And that's when we then call our power back to the present moment. The final page that I will read of the book that I wrote last night and today for you here, and through the last 3.5 years while I've been putting it all together, is this. We must design our own special practice that will better honor all of who we are instead of only celebrating aspects of ourself. CELL-F. And in the process, we must intentionally fill the cells of our energy den, Eden, with faith in the power of goodness to triumph over evil, where the energy is veiled, to prevent us from seeing our power to choose to find the goodness and face the shadows. We are called to excavate the toxic barrels from the subconscious ocean of collective consciousness and begin to purify ourselves. Real I zing. Real I zing, zing. Distraction and fatigue are strategies the dark side employs to keep us down on our faith in ourselves. It's about taking our power back so we become our own biggest cheerleader, because if not us, then who will be? Abusive parents don't generally give back the toys they take away. So why do we think this will be any different? A story for 2020 and hope to say the best is truly yet to come, and it is us who will decide what that story will be. So, karma is the law to understand. Karma is to understand God and the universe, indeed. It is why I pray to be who I came here to be, and to be willing to lead myself strongly and wisely as best as I can, and why I had to go through everything I did of giving away my power in order to finally get to the place where I found that no one actually could wield my power as wisely as me when I was in my sacred side. When in my scared side, I'm no better than anyone else. But when I'm in my sacred side, I have power because I'm present, and you do too. And that's what we have forgot to do, call ourselves present. Fatigue and distraction just keep us out of the now moment where we have no power. So bring our power back into this now moment, use breath, create a special practice. That's what this 33 days to dream a new dream together program course is all about. I will have a mentorship group beginning later in the month too, because I know that many people have been asking me for that, and I have not been charging for what I've been putting out because I feel personally it's more important to me that we, the people, have access to the tools more so than me have extra money in my bank account. Don't get me wrong, I love money and I appreciate it very much, and I do use it to buy things that excite and delight me, and I often make those purchases with others in mind too, because I love sharing joy. I love sharing experiences. I love doing things that help other people remember their greatness. And I do all of these things in hopes that it will spark it in somebody else's heart to do the same for others too. Because I believe that we are inherently good by nature. We are beautiful souls who have come here and are part of a crazy production right now simply because we have trusted ones who have proved themselves untrustworthy to yield the power, to wield the power, and they've not done it wisely, and so now we're called to take it back. And Article 61 of the Magna Carta is one of the ways that we can do that. The teachings of the Ascended Masters is another. And ultimately, gathering the best principles from all of the religions is very important because, as Michael Seeger shares in the episode on the causal body and the seven rays, each religion, there are 8 religions that each are connected to a sacred ray, which is why each religion seems limited, because each of those religions are limited to a ray of awareness. And so if we can apply that theory to the emotional high rise of perspective that I created over the years and knew was only partly there because Abraham Esther Hicks's emotional guidance system was then applied to the theory of the high rise building, which is the same address but a completely different experience based on whether you're at the bottom floor in the basement or whether you're at the penthouse or middle floor. And in working with Michael and the teachings that he's sharing in the Michael and Laura show, it's become very clear to me that the negative emotions are actually more connected to the electronic belt. And then the higher level emotions, about the midway point of contentment and above, are ultimately connected to the causal body, where we are positively qualifying our karma because we are choosing virtuously compared to destructively. And that's the choice that we are always faced with. And so I hope that you can take what you got from today, not to dwell in fear, but to say that together we are stronger. And that is why we're being called to be separate. That is why we are being taught that we are essential or non-essential, that we must be afraid of social distancing compared to physical distancing. If health was the real thing that it was about, they would have offered some tools and strategies to make health a bigger thing rather than giving away far more chocolate and chips and candy and all of the things that ultimately are junk food that are being put into engines that are not able to run at top speed if they are filled with junk compared to if they are filled with things that can fuel them. So the good in us is good. The evil in us is likewise evil. The seed sprouting to the mouse being consumed by the snake. All things obey the law of karma. From the seed sprouting. Oh, yes, I missed the from. From the seed sprouting to the mouse being consumed by the snake, all things obey the law of karma. Indeed. And my law of karma today says that I have given you from my heart the best that I feel could be shared at this point. There is still lots more, and there are so many rabbit holes that you can get lost down. But what I'm going to say is, instead of fixating on the crazy experience that we are being distracted away from, and if you are not familiar with adrenochrome, which is the oxidization of the adrenaline from the pineal gland that is extracted from tortured and sexualized beings, particularly children, which sounds crazy, but that's part of this whole satanic component of the nastiness of this elitist agenda. If we actually look at pink drink, which is also what adrenochrome is called, then we start to understand that the world is stranger than fiction, and we are being called to demand for change, and also to say that we will all be held responsible. We will all be held accountable. And we all have come here with an opportunity to transmute karma from the past and this lifetime in order to become the enlightened ones, like Jesus was before us, who said that you too can do all of this and more. And the same I say to you, not that I am Jesus-like per se, but it is to say I've tuned into a different level of awareness, clearly. And I am doing my best to share that with people who are able to receive it and then take it and use it, because ultimately knowledge is powerless unless applied. It is a Judaic agenda, and it is aligned to the Nazis' backup plan in case they didn't win the war. And I said I was going to cut this off at 1:30, so, well, 1:30, at an hour and a half into the message, which we've now reached. So Michael's teachings seem inspired from the Rosicrucian philosophy, true knowledge, although I am concerned with the amount of lies sprinkled in. Lies sprinkled into truth are always concerning. And he is familiar with the Rosicrucian tradition. That is not his indoctrination. He has actually read the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran and Buddhism and the Bible and many, many different religious traditions in order to gain his insights, and then has been studying with the teachings of the Ascended Masters for 40 years too, with the decrees and all of the practices. So I'm really trying to disseminate some of the information that is within that without making that the path, because anytime we turn one thing into the way, it becomes a trap. So instead of that, I simply am trying to pull out lots of different things, which is why I did the video on natures and nudism and the desire to be ourselves, and, you know, really stepped up with interviewing Jackie Phoenix as well about Article 61 and lawful descent, which we are being called to do. And underneath the view right now, actually, in fact, I have the Barons Act, where we sign the oath and then send it in, and it's the oath of allegiance, which you send to one of the barons, and the one that we've been given the address of is the oath of allegiance to dear Lord Craigmile. And I'll just read it out because it's significant. Thank you. I appreciate that, Patrick. It says, I insert your name here if you are willing to take a stand for humanity, our rights, and our future too. In full knowledge of treason being committed in Parliament by delivering the sovereign peoples of this common law land into the hands of foreign powers, in understanding of some wrongs done by the present holder of the office of sovereign, from whom I now transfer my allegiance, I do so willingly and wholeheartedly enter into lawful dissent, as the law demands by royal command, and I solemnly swear upon my oath to obey the direction of the Lords of the Barons' Committee, whom invoked Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta on the 23rd March 2001, in accordance with the royal command to do so, as long as said barons act strictly according to constitutional law at all times without deviation, and until such times as redress of these present wrongs has been achieved. Sworn on December 14th for me, and now read again on this 31st day of the craziest year that most of us have experienced. And ultimately, we are here for this. We chose to be here for this. All of us have what it takes to make it through this. We just need each other in order to stay strong. So stay connected. Larjay, namaste. The light in me honors the light in you. There is no political solution. The politicians are nothing more than actors. The world is a stage, and we are the fools. Indeed, and yet fools accept new adventures. And the new venture is the call to dream a new dream together, which is why this coming month, today is day 2 of the 33 days to dream a new dream together experience. And you are, if you're interested in actually learning from the teachings of the Ascended Masters through the Shambhala Temple of Light and would like guidance in that practice, you can go to the Shambhala Temple of Light website, which I did an intro video on my channel too. You can go through to set up some accounts. The beginner's class is starting January 2nd, Saturday nights at 7 o'clock all through the year with Michael. And so by all means, attend those. I sometimes work during that time, so I'm not able to attend, but certainly can listen back to the replay because they're all stored there and it's a great resource. And there's a tremendous wealth of information there as well that we can dig into, of which information does not change anything unless we apply it. So remembering that and then saying, hey, if you want to come out and join with me again, I'll be partnering up with Kip Brooks on Tuesday, January 5th at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where we are going to have the third Peaceful Inner Warriors United Summit. So we're going to be focused on legacy. And I cannot wait to bring that with you. I hope that you will take notes from this, that you did, that you have questions. I would love to know what those questions are. Please share. I may not have the answer, but I suspect that I could find it. And so I hope that this also encourages you to explore some of the things that I mentioned, because it's very easy for us to not want to believe some of the things that people say when there is so many misinformation and disinformation campaigns existing right now. And yet I do also believe that we feel truth. It is about resonance, and the more in tune with our own selves we are, and the stronger we know what we stand for, then the harder it is for us to fall for just anything, of which this virus is just a pandemic that we have fallen into because we've not wanted to make a fuss. And now I say it's time we make a fuss. So here's to us. Toodaloo. Lorjay, namaste. The light in me honors the light in you. Thank you.